Hello and welcome to another edition of the SpareTime Podcast, sponsored by ADR Wear. It's me, Nigel, and him, Ben. You got it right this time. So we're back over across the Atlantic again tonight with our special guest, another PBA bowler, Bob Learn. Bob, welcome to the SpareTime Podcast.
Nigel and Ben, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. Now, I'm going to ask the question. I usually ask the question where you're coming to us from. It's obviously somewhere in the US. But the second question is, I assume you're in a pro shop. So in that order, where are you from? Where are you at the moment, Bob?
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, that's a good place to be. I've not been there yet, but it's on my list of places to go. And you're obviously in a pro shop?
Yes, pro shop I run, 10-pin pro shop here in Columbia, Tennessee, just below Nashville.
Ah, okay. It's we've never had a guest online from the pro shop yet, so this is the first. So tell us about your pro shop. How did you get into that?
Well, I've been in and out of pro shop business since the early '80s, but more recently because I've been focused on my coaching, tying into pro shop as part of my setup for coaching. So here we have Specto and we have a video system here, and I run it as a training center, but I have the pro shop as well.
Okay. How long have you had the pro shop?
This pro shop is just moved into the shop 3 months ago.
Okay. And is it a big bowling center it's in?
It is in 32 lanes, so I guess as far as where you guys are at, it's a pretty good sized bowling center.
Yeah, we used to have a 32-lane one here in Sunderland many years ago, but it was demolished to make way for a supermarket. So how many lanes? What's the most lanes we've got locally? About 20 something.
About 24, but half of them are like, if we're talking bowling alleys we can use, 19, 18, 17.
Yeah.
Not many.
So yeah, 32 lanes is pretty good there. So okay, Bob, what started you in bowling all those years ago?
Well, I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania, which is right on the Great Lakes. We have a lot of snow, very cold in the winter, and it's a great activity to do inside.
So what age did you start bowling?
I started at 8 years old. My parents bowled, and when I turned 8, you were old enough to start bowling youth league. So started at 8, and from there on, I couldn't get enough of it.
So you started pretty young. I mean, Ben started also at 8 years of age.
So 7.
Was it 7? Yeah, it was around about there. So at what stage did you start to realize that you were doing this for more than just fun, that you could actually go somewhere?
Well, probably by the time I was 15, my average was getting bigger, higher, enough to bowl with the better bowlers, the adult bowlers in the area. And by 17, I had a keen interest in trying the tour specifically because I felt like I had enough success locally that I thought I could try bowling on tour full time.
Okay, and
So
what year did you
I did go out when I was nearly 19.
Mm-hmm. So you joined the tour at 19. Did you? So what was the first year like?
Well, I was doing a lot of watching, not a lot of bowling. I bowled, but I wasn't making a lot of the finals. I'd sit and watch and study the bowlers that were, and learn from that. And took me 2 years till I made my first TV show. But I was young, and I learned a lot. I decided to come off the tour at that time, and I came back 8 years later, and with immediate success. That time, I came out and won my second event, and the following year, my first event. So I felt like I was ready to stay on the tour.
So there was an 8-year gap, you said?
There was an 8-year gap.
So it was an 8-year gap between doing your first PBA event and doing the tour full time. Is that right?
Yeah. 8 years I went out for 3 years. I bought a local TV show when I was 18, and from that, I had a person wanted to sponsor me on the tour. So he gave me a 3-year deal, and I went out and bowled for the 3 years. And I felt like I wanted to spend more time at home, work harder on my game, and then go out if another opportunity became available, and that became available in 1992.
Okay, so you got your
So
first
from
sponsor.
1984 to 1992, I just bowled local PBA regional events and a few of the tour events when they were within close proximity. Though I had made several TV shows during that period of time, it wasn't until I decided to go full time again that I won.
Okay, so who was your first sponsor, and what was that like to get a sponsor for the first time?
Well, actually, again, I bowled this local TV show in Buffalo, New York, which is an hour and a half from where I live. And I went on a pretty good winning streak. Bowled a big 800 series. Back then was amazing. But I did it on the TV show, and I had the highest 3-game set on that 30 years that was a TV show, or 25 years that it was a TV show. And from that, I had someone reach out to me through the studio, wanting to talk to me and ask to sponsor me. So it was something that I hadn't really sought out directly, but it came to me. So from that, I said, yes, of course, I would like to try it. I was going to go to college for art in New York City. I had a scholarship, but then I said, well, I can try that later. I want to go bowl if I have an opportunity.
So your first sponsor, was it a bowl contract?
Did I have a bowling ball contract? No, not until I went back out full time in 92.
Okay, but what was your first sponsor? What did he do?
So in the 1980s, I was able to get equipment and stuff from some companies like Hammer, especially. And so I could get some stuff from them, but I wasn't on staff. It's a little different now. There's a different structure to it. Back then, you were either on national staff or you weren't on any staff. And now there's regional staff, and they have like 3 different levels of staff. So you couldn't get on a staff unless you won national events. And so it took till 92 for me to accomplish that. And then I had a couple of different offers, one from Ebonite, one from AMF, and one from Hammer. And I decided to sign with AMF. So I was with AMF for 10 years with a gentleman named Dick Weber, who is a pretty well-known bowler and a great player and great person to be able to be tutored by, and watch him do what he did when we did exhibition stuff was amazing. So it was a great opportunity. And at that time, AMF was big in bowling. And then in 2002, they were no longer making bowling balls. So then I changed to track bowling. And then eventually to Brunswick. Now I'm Brunswick, have been Brunswick for a long time.
Yeah, I think AMF was probably the first bowling brand that I heard of, because the bowling centre that used to be here in Sunderland.
Do I lose any points if I say that I didn't know they made bowling balls?
Eh?
Do I lose points if I say that I didn't know they made bowling balls?
What, AMF?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't either, but it was certainly the first brand that I was aware of, because the 32 Lane Bowling Centre here in Sunderland had AMF everywhere. I mean, this was like the late 80s or something like that. I'm guessing that I think it was probably the only brand that I'd heard of at the time. So they were pretty big at that time, and still are, but especially in those days.
Yes. Yeah, it was a very large. Brunswick and AMF were comparable in size in the 80s. But Brunswick, of course, is the biggest name in bowling now.
So back in the 80s, I mean, when I started to bowl sort of late 80s, and things were totally different. I mean, we were just doing it for fun. We weren't doing it in a league or anything like that. And, we sort of worked out a few things ourselves, and we used to have the TVs on the empty lanes that were showing the PBA. I didn't know it was a PBA at the time, but sometimes we'd sit there while you were waiting to take your shot. You'd be looking at the TV, and it was always fascinated me, the professional bowlers and the TV coverage, and it used to involve the families. The TV camera used to pan to people in the audience, and it used to be, Bob's auntie and things like that, which we were really amused about. We didn't know of any other sporting event where that sort of thing would happen. So it grabbed my attention in those days. 80s was a long time ago. So you must, since that time right up to now, you must have seen a lot of changes. What do you think is the one most significant change you've seen from like the 1980s to today?
Well, certainly the equipment evolved so much since the 80s. Bowling balls do so much more for the player than ever. But of course, we have to look at two-handed bowling. Two-handed bowling certainly has been the biggest change from the physical side.
Mm-hmm. So, talking about two-handed bowling here, obviously you as a pro shop owner and a coach especially will have understood the sort of the new sort of wave of two-handed bowlers coming through now, and how different do you think it's going to make the sport in the future?
Well, I mean, it continues to evolve. So I can imagine, that it's hard to even perceive that anything bigger than what we have seen can possibly be in the near future. I'm assistant coach for Team USA as well. And in our young youth squad, we have 18 members. And out of the 18 men, there were 16 two-handers. So that goes to show just how dominant the style is.
Yeah. Thinking about this, actually, to be fair, in Team England at the moment, there's 6 of us that are in the spaces for under 19s to qualify for next year, and I think 5 of us are two-handers. So
Out of how many?
So it's the top 6, like in the qualifying spot, and 5 of the people that are in the 6 are two-handed.
Wow, there you have it.
Yeah,
pretty much the same ratio, right? Yeah,
pretty much.
When did you first see? Can you remember when you first saw your two-handed bowler and who it was?
Well, the first one that I had ever competed against was at the U.S. Open. Early 1990s, maybe 95, somewhere there. And it was against Oscar Palermo. And it was the last game of the evening. The lanes were hooking a lot. And I threw it pretty hard, and I couldn't put a lot of revolutions on a ball as well. But when I bowled against him, he was faster and had higher RPMs, and his ball went through the front of the lane differently, and it created different shape on the back end. And I struggled to shoot 190 that game, and I was in the top 10 at the time, and he shot 240 at me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. How do I beat someone like this? And then it was not long after that, of course, that Jason Belmonte made his way out.
I mean, Jason Belmonte's initially had a lot of controversy surrounding his bowling style of being a two-hander. So what was your first thoughts when you saw your first two-hander? Obviously, it was in those days it was unconventional. What did you think about that?
I was more amazed from a physical standpoint, having been coaching even at that time. I'm like, wow. I wanted to identify how he was doing it, and if I come across somebody that was doing it, how I could help them, right? So I embraced it as something that was new. Definitely took it to another level, and I didn't look at it as a joke or like this isn't right. I more or less was impressed with the style.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely played a big part. I don't think there's any podcast that we do where somebody doesn't mention two-handed bowling somewhere down the line. So it is a big thing, and it's a big evolution of the sport. So that compared to the technology now of the new balls, what do you think could be the next big thing? We've had got reactive balls, which we didn't used to have, and now we've got two-handed bowling, and we have the technology on the lane, Specto, and all that sort of thing.
String pins.
Yeah, well, string pins.
Exactly.
Yeah, the question of string pins. I mean, where do you stand on string pins? Because they're appearing here and everywhere.
Well, I got to bowl against them once. The first time that I saw it and bowled on it was in England, by the airport. Yeah, airport. That was just a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I was like, okay, it's different. Of course, when the curtains come down and set up, it looks normal, but all the pins laying on the deck where it was kind of really different to see. But certainly, I've seen the older style and then the new certified machines, and there's definitely a difference. Certainly in pin carry. Are there still differences between what we would call natural pinfall with non-string pins? There is still a difference. Some good, some bad. The messenger, that comes across and gets the 10 pin on the new machines, it's very difficult to do. And being around two-handers, which I coached University of Tennessee Southern men's and women's programs for college, and I had the most two-handers on my team of any college team. But being around them, knowing that it was almost 100% when they had a messenger come across, it was going to take the 10 pin out. And their scores were definitely higher because of their ability to do that. Having that taken away, I think becomes a little bit more of an equalizer scoring-wise with a hit that's almost 100%, almost certain with a two-hander compared to a one-hander. I feel like that might be, leveling the field a little bit. So that I guess you could say is a plus as a one-hander. The downside is that there are still, again, inconsistencies. Like if you have a washout and you hit the head pin and it goes around the 10 pin, you can't miss it. Like you can make a 10 pin go around, head pin go around a 10 pin without a string. But if you have string attached, it takes the 10 pin every time. So there's that. And there's others like that, like a 2 and a 10 or anything that would be a split conversion with a pin attached can sweep the pin away. So there's that inconsistency. The downside, I guess, is if you were in a important shot to win a tournament and you see an inconsistent pin reaction as a reasoning to lose the match, Otherwise, I think it's pretty close. Overall, obviously the averages when they compared it, were very close, 2 or 3 pins. So it wasn't anything like that. Getting used to seeing the pin action, getting used to seeing that style of machine, which will dominate the landscape of bowling going into the future. Absolutely, 100% will be the standard eventually.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people have opinions about that, thinking that string pins are not real bowling. And let's face it, string pins came along as a a cost-saving exercise for bowling center owners. And I know that the savings are significant. Also, the significantly less maintenance needed on the string pins. But I think what?
I think personally, from my view, I've won and lost on string pins, and I've won and lost on free fall. And the way I see it is, I'm bowling on the same thing that the person on the left and the right of me is bowling on. So if we're bowling on strings or free fall, they've got to bowl on it as well. So I think for me, it's kind of Yeah, there's definitely differences, and some centers are better than others. Where you will notice difference at some centers, and some you're like, okay, I really notice a difference. But I think for the most part, it's like you bowl on what you bowl on. And it's the same as what everyone else bowls on. So I think competition to competition, I don't think it creates too much of an advantage or disadvantage to anybody.
I think it's harder if you're maybe a little more seasoned, if you will, in age, because you've been around the traditional setup for your whole entire life, and it's something new. But being younger, I think it would be easier to accept. I spent 40 years competing without string pins, so it's been a long time to see what I call natural pinfall. But even synthetic pins, twister pins, are not the same. And I would say there's as many differences to string pin as there is the synthetic pin. And of course, the string pins are going to be synthetic. So there's that.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, personally, for me, string pins just doesn't seem to be real bowling in many ways. But as you said, maybe it's because I started to bowl back in the 80s, and like you did, and I've been around a long time with normal free fall pins, and these weird string pins come in. And the first time Ben bowled a tournament on them, it was weird to watch because the pins had fell, and then there'd be one pin standing, and it'd just almost like a haunted pin just used to just disappear.
I think there was a lot of controversy with it because, from memory, the first time I ever saw string pins was the Irish Open a few years ago, and because it was something very brand new, different countries had different interpretations of the rules. So my interpretation was if it goes down, like I'd sort of never seen it, so I wasn't sure how what the ruling was. But we bowled with the Dutch, and their interpretation was if it's obvious that the string took it out, it doesn't count. And then some people it doesn't matter. And then for me, it kind of added a bit of confusion. But I think if you dive too deep into if the string takes out or if the string doesn't take it out, or it has to have pin connection, I think it makes it really hard because then anything can happen. You can just argue, yeah, but the string took it out. And if I think it was a really tough time sort of distinguishing, what the actual rulings were, because it was never something we were really briefed on. And I think that's probably one of the downfalls of string pins, that when we have gone into competition on string pins, no one's really been told, look, this is string pins, this might happen, and this is how you deal with it if it does happen. It was kind of by the way, there's strings over there, see what happens.
Well, I think that's why it's important that they came up with a certified string pin setter, and that the rules are now in place. But of course, there was that time to evolve to see if it would survive as a viable means to which people can save money and people would accept it. The one thing that's important is if you have a 32-lane center became a supermarket and string pins can make the difference and keep the bowling center, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, do you know what the technical difference is between a certified string pin setter and like a non-certified one?
I just know the machines, the actual strings themselves. All right, the length of the strings, the type of string is what USBC was, that's what they were studying. And then they came up with an acceptable machine. And based off that, you'll see it, going through that transition into certification.
So what about the bowling center you're in right now? Is that free fall of string pins?
I'm sorry?
The bowling center you're in at the moment, is that a free fall center?
Oh, free fall. You are looking at 98% of all centers here are still free fall.
Yeah.
Now I know my good friend that owns Stroud Bowl, Kim Johnson. He, he's proud of the fact that he has one free falling center, and that it's big enough to hold contests and tournaments with free fall. He acknowledges that it's important, even though he realizes the financial benefit of making them string pins.
Yeah, I mean, we know Stroud because you played there many times, haven't you? Yeah, it's a center that we're quite familiar with. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of centers, or certainly the serious centers that allow tournaments, are pretty much all free fall here. There's a one or two string pins, but not quite so many. But yeah, I know we're going to see more of them, and it's probably something you have to get used to. But as Ben said, it's a level playing field because everybody's bowling in the same type of pin setter. So, if a string is taking pins out for you, it's probably taking pins out for other people. So it levels the playing field. And it's impossible to sort of distinguish between, oh, well, a string took that pin out, so it's not counted. It's just, you would never get anywhere. You just never progress with a game because there'd be too much debate and discussion about whether the pin fell down properly or whether there was a string took it out.
I think, though, if you look at, so if you're bowling for a title of a certain level and you're bowling on regular pins and then string pins, and people are winning with some maybe breaks that you wouldn't see with regular pinfall, you say, well, is it the same? He won, a very lucky, coincidence to strike when he needed it versus, a solid 10 pin or solid 8 pin on a great shot on the regular pins. They're like, how is that fair that one becomes a win, one becomes a loss based on the fact you're on strings or otherwise, and yet held to the same level of accomplishment? I think that's just where the old people that have been competing for many years have more of a problem with it versus, the younger player. But again, it's part of the evolution. And my whole interest is that bowling survives and it does well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, yeah, two-handed bowling, string pins, then, there's certainly two elements of evolution that's happened over the last sort of, 10, 20 years or whatever. So you have an array of balls on the rack behind you there. You had to choose your favorite ball out of all those balls at the back. Which one would it be and why?
Right there. Theorem.
That one? Which one's that?
Theorem, track theorem.
Okay, so why would that be your favorite?
It's a favorite of many. It's brands of Brunswick, so there's 7 brands back there, but with everyone on staff that's thrown the selection of bowling balls, everyone I know has a theorem in their bowling bag. So that goes to speak how good the ball is, how well it reads the lanes, how well matched up the core and cover stock are for a variety of players. I mean, you can find each one in their strengths, and not to say there's not other comparable, but that one is certainly a standout. If it was released in December, many people look at it like a 2024 release, and if so, it would be bowling ball of the year. It's just that well liked.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to go onto your nickname, and it's I do this quite frequently every week. I'll go into my pro shop and go, oh, this guy's coming on, we've got this guy. So I mentioned your name, and the first thing my pro shop guy said, and everyone in the pro shop was like, oh, it's Mr. 300, and I'm like, let's have a look. So I googled it, and at first it said you bowled 651 300s, and I looked and went, that doesn't make much sense. I mean, that would be some achievement. And then we got down to it, and I realized you bowled over 100 300s, and I don't think I can count that high, in all honesty. So talk us through that. How did the nickname come about, and how did you get so good at bowling 300s?
Well, when I was in the 6th grade, I can remember looking at the World Book of World Records, the Guinness Book, and lifetime most perfect games was 21. In 1986, when I was 24 years old, the same person held the record lifetime at 27. Alvin Metzger from St. Louis, Missouri. And that was the year I tied the record. So how much different the game was then, right? 27 for a lifetime with all the great bowlers of that, of yesteryear that were well known. But the scoring situation changed when we started to come out with synthetic lanes versus the wood lanes. We came out initially with a certified short pattern that had to be on every certifiable lane. So it was 24 feet only. Imagine today's bowling balls on 24 feet. You couldn't make it work. But back then with the balls we had, it actually increased scoring. And because of that, I was the right age, to be able to take advantage of that. And I started striking more, and certainly 300s became easier. And from 1986 for a couple of decades, I had the record. But that moniker, Mr. 300, did not come from me. There was one, if not the greatest bowler I've ever got to compete against, Earl Anthony. Amazing player. He was also an analyst for TV shows. And I had made a TV show, and he was commentating for the show. And he's the one that said, Mr. 300. He gave me the acknowledgement because I had the most 300s at the time, which is pretty cool because, he's one of the greatest players ever. And he gave me the name. So
can you remember your first 300?
Yeah, it was December 1st, 1980 on lanes 9 and 10 at Eastland Bowl.
So what was going through your mind when you were getting to the sort of the 9th and 10th frame?
I was always more excited. I had a couple, I had a 298, 299 prior to that. But I've always was just excited, not nervous, just excited. Because, this is what you're attempting to do, is shoot a perfect game. And I think that was one of the strengths that even early on when I was in that situation, that I embraced it, got excited about it, but never nervous about it. And I got to play that out on a TV show in my hometown in 1996, where I shot a perfect game on TV for $100,000 for that game. And again, I wasn't nervous in that situation. I've been there many times. I always felt like if I'm to the 10th frame, with all 9 strikes, that I've got the best scenario. My ball is doing the right thing. The lanes are complementing, the way I bowl. What is there to be afraid of? At that point, you take advantage of the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's, there's some pressure on you when you're about to bowl a perfect game on TV, because not only for yourself, but of all the people watching as well. So it's, do you think that once you've done it once, it becomes easier after that, psychologically?
I think everything is like that, right? Once you do it once, you believe you can. I mean, you hope you can until then. So winning my first professional tournament, it took me forever, it felt like, to be able to get to that point where I won. But within 15, 20 minutes, I was sitting back going, wow, what a fleeting moment. All these years working so hard to get that, and there it was. Just, that was it. And from that point on, I just felt like, okay, I did it once, I can do it again. It's not, as big as I once believed, because I did it, and it, I know I can do it again. So it really is mindset. This bowling game, when you get to the higher levels, it's not really very much to do with physical as much as it is mental, believing you can.
Yeah, I mean, we hear that so many times in this podcast. I think nearly every PBA bowler that comes here says what you just said. So do you do anything specifically to work on your mindset, or does it just come natural?
Well, I mean, you have this library of memories, you've downloaded over the years, and you draw on those memories to reinforce the fact you've been here before, you've done this before, and you can do it again. I think having positive bank of memories is important. Negative self-talk and all that keep you from allowing that to play out the way it's supposed to. So I think it's just reflecting on the positives. You just don't get it done thinking negatively. You got to believe it. You see it, believe it, do it. And when I mean see it, I mean go back to things you've done in the past, be able to relive that in your mind, so you see it again, you believe it, and then you go out and do it.
So it's a form of visualization.
Yes.
Yeah, I think in the US, mindset is a lot more sort of widely understood than it is here in the UK. I mean, yeah, we know about it in the UK, but I think
it's not taught.
Yeah, it's not taught as much in the UK as it is in the US, and I think that probably makes a difference in a lot of sports, not just bowling.
Yeah, believing it's okay for you to win is a big one. I think when you're outside looking, you're like, oh, I wish I could, do that, or I would love to be able to get to that level. But I mean, it really is allowing yourself to be that person. I fought with that on my first early years in that first try at the tour. I would hoped for it, but I didn't truly believe it was for me. I felt like those players are just better. Knowing now, that they started in the same place. At one time, they thought the same thing, and then they worked and worked and worked. And the harder they worked, the easier and the luckier they became, and the easier it was.
So I mean, you're into coaching in a big way now. So when you first meet a bowler that you're going to be coaching, how did you make an assessment as to what their mindset is? And if you do, what do you base that assessment on?
Well, there's a couple things. I always do an interview. We have a conversation, ask them what they want out of the session, but find out more about their background, and this is the way they will talk to me and explaining, I've never really been a really good bowler, or I always get to these points and then I get stuck. I can't really get through. We already know they have roadblocks. So, based on their personality, you attack that differently. Someone who's introverted versus extroverted, I mean, there's a different line of communication there. But the more you're around those type of personalities, and the more times that you're in a situation with those same conversations, it's just easier for you to say the right things for that individual and work through some of those problems. But honestly, they'll reveal where they're at and where their mindset is at. Many people just, I feel like, don't give themselves enough credit for being good enough. I think it goes across the board. I don't think it's, just sport related. The people that are successful are the ones that believe that they can be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, belief is everything.
Right.
And what they say is fake it until you make it. And that often works, because if you fake it, then you believe it, you become to believe it. And if you believe it, you can achieve it. So it's a pretty good strategy.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to sort of ask, obviously, there's a lot of bowlers who are maybe younger, or, amateur bowlers who are looking to improve their mental game. What tips would you provide them to try and push their mental game to the next level?
I'm sorry, it did come through. I couldn't hear the question.
I said there's a lot of amateur bowlers and people that want to improve their mental game. What tips would you give them to push it to the next level?
I mean, certainly some people do well with reading books and self-help books like that, but it really is built off of a library of experiences. Being out, if you want to get better at doing something, you have to do it more often. And so competing, certainly you have to get in tournaments, you have to compete. and but focus on the positives. What good happened? Where did your growth come from in that day? Albeit you made a change to a different ball, or you made a different lineup as far as how you aligned to the lane. You did something special during that day. You have to pick the positives and build that mental library to draw from.
Mm-hmm.
Opposed to, that was so horrible. That was just bad, right? More learning is available to you when you struggle. When you're bowling good, there's really nothing that you're learning at that point, except for the fact that you can bowl good, but you're not truly learning about your game or your mindset as much as when you are struggle and you find your ways through adversity.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to sort of highlight, your US Open win in 1999. What was that like for you? Not only, professionally as a bowler, but as a person.
Well, I always looked at the U.S. Open, and so do many others, as just being that tournament, the most difficult tournament to win. We had, big field sizes, so many people competing. Um, and it was the big one. It was the one that everybody wanted. I had made U.S. Open TV shows prior to that, but not to the title match. So I had led that tournament. I just had to wait for one player, and I can say this, that when I threw the strike in the 10th, I slid on my back and screamed as loud as I've ever screamed in my life. That's how exhilarating that moment was.
Mm-hmm. So, I just want to sort of bring it to that point of, you have to strike, and, it's a high pressure game. You're on TV, things like that. What is going through your mind to sort of ensure you that you're gonna strike? So it's a human sort of, it's a human thing to do to have thoughts come to your mind going, oh, I've got to strike, and put a lot of expectation and pressure on yourself. What was going through your mind to kind of go, no, this is what I've got to do, this is what I will do, kind of thing?
Yeah, it is just that. It's what you just did, self-talk. You spend that moment and you say positive things to yourself. This is going to be a great shot. I'm going to go up there and throw the best shot I've ever thrown under pressure. And in that sense, in that shot, it was a perfect strike, it's the greatest thing about bowling is that you get to test yourself like that a lot. Even when you're starting out, if I get this this strike or this spare, I make 200 game, right? If I get this strike, I shoot my first 600, 700, whatever it is. But you build off of moments that you get to test yourself and feed off of those successes that you've had in the past again. I think that's the coolest thing, is that you get to put yourself in a place where something matters, and you get to test yourself against the test that you're up against, and you get to go up there and make great shots when you need it. There's no better feeling that you didn't let yourself down, right? That you went up there and you did what you needed to do. You allowed it to happen. There's nothing more powerful than that.
Mm-hmm. I just want to highlight on here, you've been involved with the TurboTech Collegiate Expo. Tell us about that.
Well, there was not any kind of event like that. I had priorly worked at USBC or ABC in the coaching department, and we talked about things that bowling needed, like a combine and stuff that like other sports like football have in our in the US. And I felt like, yeah, we talked about it, but now it's time to put the event together. So I came up with the idea to create the combine for bowling. I worked at Turbo. We had a training center there, and talked to the ownership, along with a person that I worked with, and he now runs the ITRC, in fact. But we collectively worked on this project together to put out the first event of its kind. And it was great. We made the connection between all the colleges and all the students that were looking to go to college, especially those that weren't on the radar already. And that's the important one, right? Because we have our junior gold, which is a massive tournament. And coaches know who the best bowlers are through junior gold. But not everybody gets to go to junior gold. They don't have qualifiers in their area, whatnot. So it was an opportunity for all players to come and be able to present themselves in front of coaches for an opportunity to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would be a great thing for Europe to have the same event, so that colleges can, recruit. And, we've had a much storied recruiting from, say, England alone. Izzy, she was bowling for Jacksonville State this year. They won the championships. Verity bowling for Weber. There's more. I'm just saying there's just a couple that come to mind, that not only came, but they came with great success. And now, successful on the professional tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if it makes it real. They came from the same place and were able to make it to, the tour and go to college and have it paid for. Those are great things to be able to accomplish. And I just feel like that kind of event needs to happen in Europe as well, to get more kids the opportunity to go to college and play in college sport for bowling here is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Now, forgive my naiveness here. What's the combine? How does it work, and how can people get involved?
Well, the combine was basically we would have players go through different areas. One would be working on release, timing. We'd have mental time with our most well-known sports psychologist, Dr. Dean Hinnants. So they would be exposed to all that. And out of that, coaches would see the results in each of their testing, if you will, and be able to assess, their level of competency as far as bowling in all aspects of the sport, so that they were able to, look at this player with certainty that they would want to recruit them for their college. So it was a great opportunity. USBC did follow up with a combine event, which was basically get on Specto and take all the numbers that Specto could provide, do strength training to see, how athletic they were and where their strengths and weaknesses were. They were tested on all that for colleges to be able to see those numbers as well. The difference was the combine really was there to collect data, information at the USBC, whereas the Collegiate Expo was also an opportunity for the coaches to get involved with those players one-on-one. Secondly, that our staff that we had would get to spend time with them on lanes and work with them to help them get better. So they can get a better look from a coach. So we spent a couple of days with them before the coaches were invited.
Mm-hmm. So, we'll talk about your coaching career. You've had a really successful one, coaching particularly at the collegiate level of bowling. How, do you set yourself apart as a coach, and what do you enjoy doing about coaching? Because I know for some people that, they'll be a player and they'll only ever be a player. Some people will be a coach and only ever a coach. But some people like you yourself, are an immaculate player and a great coach as well.
Well, I think it was something, again, that when I got with AMF, I got to do a lot of events with some really great people and also some great coaches. And I got to learn about, how to coach from some of them. I grew from that. I liked that I could help other people. I certainly liked to see their expression when they were getting better. Something I've always been driven by. It was something that I guess I always wanted to have for myself growing up, but there really wasn't that in my area. Being able to help take away from that learning curve that I had. Remember, I went out early, and then it took a big space and time before I could go out full time again. But if I had the right coach, I felt like I could have been successful the first time. And I think I love being able to be that person to help them get to that first time with a lot better opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, there's thousands of coaches, in the USA alone, but there's few that are at that elite level, and I think it's safe to say that you're one of them that's at the elite level. What sets you apart from all the other coaches?
Well, one, I think I do it a lot. So I've traveled for years doing clinics, and I did work at USBC. So of course I worked along with some great minds of bowling there, and I've been exposed to a lot of great around events that have a lot of great coaches, and you learn from each other. Even at Team USA camps, still picking up things from other coaches, how they say things, how they think of things, and they do the same from someone like myself. So we grow more if we actually are exposed to others that have the same interests. Not that you come up with all the great ideas as one person, right? It doesn't work like that. I think what makes me, I always felt like I was really, really good at understanding lane play and ball motion, which I feel like is definitely my strength when it comes to like Team USA. Definitely, certainly high-end players, be able to see it so well. I feel like I could help really, really, really well at the high end. At the low end, I have a keen interest in making people better, getting them excited about the sport and wanting them to stay in the sport. It's the only way I feel like we truly grow the sport is if we can get to enough people that have interest in the sport, get them to a level in which they enjoy the sport and feel like they could be pretty good at it. I feel like from that, we can grow the sport. But if there's nobody there doing it, actively going out and doing it, then how does it happen? So for years, I've just traveled weeks at a time doing clinics and growing all levels of bowlers. And I think that's made me a better coach because I'm not just specific to one area. Like I said, lane play ball motion would be one that's easy for me because I spent my life bowling on tour, right? And seeing the lanes and making good choices. I feel like as well as the other players. And I think communication wise, I've heard enough different things said to people and how they receive that I can pull from that. And you could say the same thing to somebody as someone else did, but there's 5 different ways to say it, and only maybe one clicks. And if you can say it the way that is meaningful to that person, then it matters. And I feel like just the experience of being around enough people that I can come up with the right message for that player.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you mentioned that you coach Team USA. How does it differ from coaching, your college or even your one-to-ones? How different is national team coaching from, sort of your national coaching?
Well, at the youth level, we do make changes to physical games. We do touch on physical changes with the adult teams, but it is more about getting to understand that player, understand what they like, because when you're in competition and you can better help that player. The one thing you can't do as a coach is you can't try to cookie cut anything. Everybody is an individual. They do things differently. You can pick our tour and you'll be hard pressed to find 2 people that look alike in their style of how they do it. Now, certain things come together for each and every player that play at the high level, but they're all different. And to try to make them all the same or all think the same would be a major failure. So getting to know that player, understand how they think, what they like to see, what they want to hear. We do ask our players, especially we get more feedback on that from our women. What do you want to hear when you come off the lanes? From your fellow players. you want to be told good shot? Do you want to be told bad shot? You know, when it's bad shot, what do you want to hear? And so everybody has a different answer to that. So as a coach, you want to make sure that you're giving them the information that they're more receptive to. We all know when we make a bad shot, it's a bad shot, right? Afterwards, you know, but what do they want to know about it when they come back? It's all about growth and whatever it takes for that player to grow. And that's what a coach is there, are supposed to be there for.
I'm going to mention the Miami Waves now. Explain what your involvement is with those and how that came about.
Well, the PBA League, they decided during COVID that they could open up 2 teams for women to be involved with. And so myself and another coach were able to get involved with picking 2 women's teams. And so I enjoyed that a lot. I was hopeful that coming out of COVID that we could continue to have women's bowling as part of the PBA League. But there's a conflict of interest, not only with the PBA and the BPAA, with you know, use of the players, but then secondly, their seasons didn't align correctly to what was going on in the PBA side with the league. I really want to do it again. It was a lot of fun. I thought we had a great team. It was certainly something I want to do again. So I'm hopeful that they bring it back or expand on the league to be a part of it. But I thought we did really well as a team, and we had a great time doing it. So I think it's a pretty cool league. I think it's, and that's the most important part of it, is to draw interest, right?
Okay, we lost you a little bit there on the connection wasn't that good, but we got most of what you said. I think Ben has one final question to ask. Oh, Ben has 2 final questions to ask. I always forget that one. He doesn't even know his name, so I don't know why he's criticizing me.
I do. It's James. Yeah. So my second and last question would be, you know, everyone leaves bowling behind at one point, and you know, the only thing you leave behind is your legacy. When you do leave bowling behind, what legacy do you hope to leave?
That it made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Just that I was able to make a difference. I made bowling a better place.
Yeah, that's a great legacy you have, and I think it's something that you're definitely going to achieve. And the final question from me is, we ask this at the end of every SpareTime Podcast episode. If you have to nominate one person for you to help bring onto our podcast who you think might be able to share a story, or whose story needs to be heard, or would benefit, you know, the bowling world by hearing about their story or what they have to share, who would you nominate to come onto the SpareTime Podcast next?
Oh, I think the feed has frozen. Because I don't know what you can see, but all we can see is a still of Bob, and he's just staring at us and not moving. So
we were doing so well.
Yeah, it was the. I don't know if it's going to come back. We're going to give it a minute or so for it to come back to see the feed, because we've never had this before. This is the first for the SpareTime Podcast to have a feed completely freeze.
Just writing that down to edit out.
Yeah. Oh, and it's more than frozen. It's now gone completely. So we'll give it a few seconds to see Bob actually comes back. It was going to happen. It was always going to happen. But normally we've been pretty lucky. We normally get a good connection. We don't get timed out, or we haven't lost a connection. But this is the first. So yeah, Bob, you've got another first here on the SpareTime Podcast. You're the first person to disappear on the SpareTime Podcast. So I don't think he's coming back. We'd like to thank Bob for coming along this evening and for taking the time to be on the podcast. Shame it ended like it did.
If he does come back, I'll attach to the video. I'll edit it and make it look like he was never gone.
Yeah.
But this is going to make a great TikTok. So hopefully this is my viral video to get Jason to come on the podcast. So Jason, if you see this this video,
Jason who?
Jason Lamonti, of course. Please come on the podcast. We have begged more than enough people, and I'm pretty sure they're sick of hearing my name.
Yeah, Bob is definitely gone now. Yeah, he was a spinning circle for a while, but he's no longer. So, well, he's got plenty of things to do there in Nashville. There's no doubt about it. So that's the end of another Spare Time podcast. It's a different end to normal. So we're going to be back again soon. If you like what you've seen today, if you like, subscribe to the channel and put any questions down below. And we'll be back on the next episode. So for me, Nigel,
And Ben,
and thank you to ADR Wear for the sponsorship. We'll see you next time.
bye.
Bye.